Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Around the U, a brand new show presented by Esports U and CSMG. I am your host, Paulie Hype, and in this show, we'll be joined by 6 different analysts across the 4 game titles: Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Valorant, Rocket League, and Overwatch. They will be going over the ECAC regular season, key highlights, and building story as we approach the playoffs of the ECAC Esports Conference, which starts April 4th. Today, on Around the U, we have Catinator 3K and Chad Lantis for Valorant. On Rocket League, we'll be joined by the pair of Pyro J and Bass from the Past. Overwatch will be broken down by none other than Dividing by Zero. But first, let's head over to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with none other than Kilamiles. Kilamiles, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Paulie. Here in Smash Ultimate ECAC, we have a lot coming down the pipeline, so let me get you all up to speed for the playoffs. The number one thing you've got to keep in mind as you look at the rankings is the undefeated team, the cream of the crop right at the top, Bay State College. 8-0 and completely earned right there. They have been more or less untouched, but there are some players who are capable of laying a finger on them. And, well, FAU Esports is definitely up there. The first team I want to turn to is NJCU and their one representative, Hydra. Now, before we talk about them, I want to go back to this past weekend. The CECC Northeast Invitational gave us a look at what the Northeast is looking like in terms of Smash hierarchy. And what we saw was Bay State walking away almost without a scratch. They took every single stock, every single time. There were players who came in and 8-stocked the other teams. They only needed 2 players, but at the end, Sonics went undefeated, did not drop all the stocks until the very last game. It took the number 2 team, all 3 of their players, to take down Sonics' 9 stocks, which makes the clip I'm about to run that much more interesting. It comes from the 1v1 tournament we held at HV GamerCon, in which we got to look at what these players look like on LAN, and NJCU's Hydra took on Sonics. And when we get into that clip, you're going to see a couple very interesting things. First of all, look at this. Last stock situation, 150%. And even though Sonics is looking so dominant, using the springs to pin Hydra at ledge, catching every attempt to get back on stage, you've got to keep in mind that this is the last stock. Punching that aggressive landing right there. Hydra cannot lay a finger on Sonics, but they were able to take them down to that final stock. You've got to remember, again, it took 6 stocks from other teams to get Sonics down to that last stock. Hydra was able to do it in 1 game. Hydra is the opener, the battering ram that you can use to soften up Bay State. But even if you get through the castle doors, the garrison inside is not easily breached. Now, let's think about the other members of Bay State. 2 key members in particular. Actually, you know what? Let's make it 3. Toxex, Floppe, and Tony Pajamas. Now, Toxex was one of the newer players we saw added to the Bay State roster, and whoo! Coming in on that Ike, they have made a show every single time they come on the stream, with clean confirms, and in general, just consistency, taking early stocks. They are a force to be reckoned with. And then Tony Pajamas, Edgeguarder Extraordinaire, Combo Fiend, they're not getting away with it. And then Floppe with the most consistent gameplay we have seen out of pretty much any player besides the very top tier like Sonics. Floppe sticks to their game plan. They stick to it well. They dominate their territory and no one is able to touch them. Sonics may be the head of the team, the player that most people are scared of. However, if NJCU is able to use Hydra to get through them, then they have a chance. But we're not guaranteed to see NJCU go up against them because if we take a look at the rankings again, one of the ways that we are sort of running this bracket is it's going to be NJCU and FAU Esports on the same side of the bracket. And that is interesting because if everything goes as it's seeded, which the playoffs in ECAC are not wanton to do, but if everything does go as seeded, we're going to see NJCU take on FAU Red. And that is not going to be an easy battle. There are so many consistent, amazing players on FAU Esports. And I think it's a battle of average skill versus peaks. Now, NJCU, we've talked about earlier, we talk about them so much because they have such a storied history. And while we talk about them, let's just run over to another clip we have of Hydra at HV GamerCon showing what's what. But as we get that clip all ready, let's talk about it. Hydra, this has been a rebuilding season for him and the side of NJCU. And we can see Hydra is an amazing player in their own right, able to beat out Soul Arts again and again and again. Also, funny little interaction right here. Goes to Smash Art as they're trying to recover, hoping to scoop them up. They get knocked right out of the explosive flame. It's like a repulsive gravity right there. Beautiful stuff so far from Hydra. And Soul Arts is a player we have seen take Hydra down to last stock consistently before. So the fact that Hydra is already looking this much better against them is so nice to see. But Hydra is not the only member. We have Zamu, I believe, coming out on the Samus. What a Samus it is, too. And especially online, it is such a force to be reckoned with. And they're a very aggressive Samus as well, which gets in people's head. And then Purple coming in on the Pac-Man is another all-rounder. A lot of people don't know how to deal with the Pac-Man, and they certainly don't know how to deal with Purple's impressive combo game and the neutral that does not let up. It's a strong roster to be sure, but as I specified last season, it is a rebuilding season for New Jersey City University. They lost a couple key players, and even though Samu and Purple and the other members of NJCU are filling the shoes, NJCU hasn't quite reached the same peaks that they were at before. Meanwhile, FAU Red, they've got an impressive roster in their own right. We've seen them in a couple of the CENC Invitationals, specifically the Southeast, and they put on a show going up against our number one seeded teams and doing work consistently. And the fact that they're able to stand up to those number one seeded teams gives me a lot of hope right here. They have, in particular, players I want to highlight. Archmage coming in on the Robin. Now, Archmage definitely was one of our most clutch players in these Southeast brackets, but even more clutch than them was Arsenic, a player who would consistently go down early in games and then come back swinging, an asset you always want to be seeing in crew battles. And then finally, Omnilax, who may be a little nerfed on the Wi-Fi, but that doesn't make their FGC characters any less deadly. Omnilax rounds out this team of heavy hitters, of killers. NJCU may have a higher peak in the form of Hydra in terms of rankings, in terms of international performance, but how are they going to stack up when it comes to actually dealing with this full roster of heavy hitters from FAU Esports? That is going to be one of the key matchups, because that, if seeding goes as planned, decides who is going to be going up against Bay State. Now, Bay State, on the other side, has one key challenger we have to keep in mind, the number 4 seed, University of Albany. Now, we saw a very good clip from them from last week, and we're going to start pulling that up now. This clip was crucial because it shows how trap characters are their specialty right there. Melly, one of the best players in their region. Actually, I think they might be like number 2 in Albany. Very impressive stuff overall. But they set the trap, you fall into it, and as soon as you spring the trap, Melly is ready to follow up. That is an amazing asset to have against Bay State, who play these highly mobile characters. You get hit by one incorrect move, and you're just dead, going off the top in an instant for percents as early as 20. And even though they died at 64 here, Belmont can kill you off the top at ludicrously early percents. Something you've definitely got to keep in mind playing against this team. Now, University of Albany. They have not been able to beat Bay State in the past, but They are the team statistically and, emotionally, physically, they are the team who is most primed to take on Bay State. They have these traps. They have the ability to punish this mobility, to take the stage away from the dominating stage control that Bay State presents. But in the end, can they get through Bay State? Now, we keep returning to Bay State and how tough they are, but we did see Bay State bleed at the CECC. They went up against St. John's, who is not in the ECAC, but they were able to take down Sonics with all 6 of their players. And you know what one of the key aspects was? When we got an interview with Bay State, they said they were not ready for one of the players. They were not fully prepared when they did their research for EJJ coming in on the DiddyCon. Now, what does that mean? What does that entail? You need to show Bay State something they are not expecting. They have a set roster, and they decide who is going in. They have players who can cover a lot of matchups, but might have one key weakness. And they have players who are very good at one particular matchup, but they're a counterpick player. You have ways to throw Bay State off their rhythm. Then they're going to be throwing in players blind, and you can have the advantage. They shown that. They showed that card. Now, Bay State is clearly confident enough in their skill that they're not worried about some random counterpick character, some random secondary. It's probably going to be a gameplay, a style change, especially with players they are very well familiar with, like Hydra. However, how are you going to get through that? That is the question. How are you going to throw a wrench in Bay State's plans? Now, one final recap. We've got a whole smorgasbord of different matchups starting out. We have University of Albany on one side of the bracket with Bay State, and University of Albany has just been looking hotter and hotter throughout this entire season. They have more or less haven't lost besides Bay State since the very beginning when they took a loss to Johnson and Wales, and they are looking so clean, so prepared for this event. Bay State, we've talked enough about them. You know, Bay State is dominant. Bay State is the current king of ECAC, and they're looking to formalize that title in these playoffs. Meanwhile, the 2 biggest contenders to Bay State on the other side of the bracket, number 2 and 3 seeds, FAU Red and New Jersey City University. Those 2 teams stand the best chance. FAU Red, with their consistency, with their roster of heavy hitters coming out, they are the ones that you have to watch out for no matter who they send out. Meanwhile, New Jersey City University, they have the battering ram that is Hydra to open up these higher seeded teams, and then they have killers in their own right. Bozamu and Purple can come out and take 6-7 stocks from any team besides the top echelon. With duels combined, can any of these teams stand up to the current number 1? That is what you need to tune into the ECAC playoffs to find out. For now, though, I've been Keel Miles. The playoffs start this Monday for Super Smash Bros., but there is more happening in ECAC. To find out more about that, we're going to go over to Valerian with Catinator 3K and Shadlantis. So we'll see you there.
Thank you very much, Miles. Fantastic job as always. And now I'm Catinator 3K, joined by the ever so handsome, so charming Chad Lantis, and we're here to take you through the Around the U section of Valorant.
Yep, going to talk about all the Valorant action across the board for these collegiate teams. All these colleges fighting for just notoriety is a big thing, scholarships, things like that, like all on the table. But at the end of the day, every team just wants to win.
You say end of the day, Chad. I say end of the season, as we just wrapped it up here on the ECAC. So let's see what that season looked like. We've got a couple clips compiled over the last 2 months of action, the last 8 weeks of gameplay. Let's see those.
Yeah, I mean, we saw all the maps represented, basically all the agents, if not all the agents represented as well. I mean, it'd be harder to find things like Phoenix, but they're all out there, I promise. But some really close matches, just like right here, 10-12 against Boise State and Farmingdale, 2 teams I'm sure we'll be talking about more in the future for this newsreel, this discussion time here. But 1v1 between Sovas Man, that's very common to see because this is the initiator coming late in the site and Saad just might feel a little sad without that. The didn't quite get the time on Dreammaker.
Yeah, it's actually a fantastic play from Dreammaker just to make spacing possible. So low HP, 7 health, so gets the job done. But don't worry, if you're a Farmingdale fan, seeing your team go down here in the clutch, it's all good. Both these teams qualified for playoffs. Both went 5-3 on the season, going to be making that A division bracket run from both of them. So no worries, no stressors. They're both absolutely chilling. Void's a player that we know this season was not chilling, was going crazy in all their matches, even matches where they do not win. I believe Pace does take that series 2-0, but still massive plays to be had. Beautiful 4K to come through for him, Cecc Smart.
Yeah, we saw even aggressive gameplay as well. We've seen that all through the weeks of VCAC. And yeah, I just love to see it when teams come together and not only are cohesive with each other, but also have the confidence in their own abilities and each other to just push the tempo and try to just outpace the opposition. Love to see that, and especially when teams like Wake Forest just run away with it 7-0 to start off that match.
Yeah, absolutely vibing it up and knowing exactly when to put that pressure on as that dash does come through. In our last clip, we get to see from the same game. The highlights were crazy from this match. It was so fun to watch these teams go back and back, and absolute slobber knocker to come through. And Voids, who better? That flick, that ankle's broken. He's in the hospital. Call Dr. Sparky, get him on the table because they're gonna have to do some surgery on that one, Chad.
Yeah, Void's neck might be broken with how fast they whip themselves around. Whiplash, perhaps. That was pretty nuts. But yeah, I mean, you always want to tune in on every single week because there always is guaranteed going to be highlight plays to grab from. I mean, you can basically just look at any week and grab a highlight reel from it too. So definitely looking forward to future matches coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk about some of these future matches going forward. We'll start here in the A division. Look at the top 8 coming through into that division. We get to see what the playoffs is going to look like. So it's not the entire bracket, but it is that top 8 seeds they're going to see go in for this Division A. No surprises for us. We talked about last week, Chad. I know you weren't on the show, but surely you saw the featured programming here on the Esports U Hub.
Of course.
I said Wichita State, Ball State, Grand Valley, the top 3 teams, they were at the time the teams to be completely tied for first place. That was a 6-1 scoreline that tied them up. Grand Valley's fallen to 3rd here. They've taken a loss. All good. Still 3rd seed. That's not too shabby. It's technically a 1st and 2nd tie, so really they're both 1st seeds, but someone's got to get at the end of the day, so round differential separates it. Wichita State going to be that 1st team. No surprises there. I got some predictions about this team, but we'll save them for later. We'll get into that segment a little bit later on. Ball State, a team that has so much support, right, in their program. They're doing a fantastic job. The whole university really does rally behind the Cardinals, so it's no surprise for me at all to see them in rank number 2. And then you go down, you see a lot of ties going through. There's a lot more teams at that 5-3 scoreline, so that just comes down to round differential, just kind of how things go for UK Esports and Scarlet Tempest. But that's going to be interesting to watch because once you get past this 6-2 scoreline, the 6th seed, Chad, it's kind of anybody's game in Division A.
Yeah, very deep division, large depth for how many teams are in here, and a lot of them are fighting for it towards the very end. It's also crazy just having a positive score line isn't good enough. You need to be dominant in this division to push through, and that is far easier said than done. And you can tell that these teams at 6-2 score line, you don't even feel all that safe in that part because you want good seeding going into playoffs. You want to be in as well positioned as possible to make the far deep run.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll touch on the full scale of this bracket here. You see the 8 teams. That's great and all. But what does that really look like going forward? Who are they up against? So these top 8 seeds, they're all going to have themselves buys into round number 2. Round 1's going to be these lower seedings, all these 5-3 gamers trying to work their way in to continue forward into the bracket to try to get their runs a little bit further. No surprise to see Wichita State up in 1st. And then interesting note to be made here is that 3rd seed that we see come in that ends up at the 6-2 scoreline, Wichita State 2-0'd them last week. So, all holds barred, they're going to go absolutely crazy. A team that I'm looking out for, they have a round 1 matchup. I'm looking out for Farmingdale, especially. Chad, I think you might be as well. We got to talk to a couple of their players, especially Xenomorphical. They come through, they're a club team, no scholarships at all. It's all passion. We just got to see them play the CECC Northeastern Invitational. They won the whole dang thing. And they are absolutely loving it. They're vibing harder than anybody else. So hard they've got club jerseys. They're a team that I think pure passion pushes them pretty far in the playoffs.
Yeah, that actually, it's really impressive from them that they don't have the scholarships there for them. They have a player literally named LF Scholarship looking for scholarship because they're trying to make scholarships happen. They're talking about how this could be a moment where they can actually make a big impact of winning out on the CEC Invitational, try and go for the Commissioner's Cup. And if they can make that happen, then yeah, their dreams could be true. They might get then picked up by some collegiate university options that can pay them out. I know you talked about also in the green room sometimes if some options out there for them because they were very impressive with how they performed, that they might be already making their ways towards that potential. And the fact that they're hungry as well, that they're putting all this together, like you said, jerseys, things like that, without even having that pay. They're doing it all out of pocket. They said they might even do like a GoFundMe or something just to get down to Atlanta for the land. Like, they want to make it happen however possible. And I love to see that passion out of these players.
Yeah, I love to see players that are passionate that are getting in the other tournaments. You know, the Esports U Hub, the network, while we're covering ECAC to focus right now, so they are jumping into the playoffs, we do cover 6 other conferences as well. And to see teams playing consistently, not just in the ECAC conference, but all these other conferences as well, is quite impressive. So another team I want to give some credit out to is they've got a round 1 matchup as well. And they are lower towards the very backside of the seating here is Mustang University. We got to see them in a couple CCC playoff bouts as well. They did make it out the group stage. I do believe that was the Southwestern Invitational. I could be wrong though, so don't hold those words as the gospel. But they made it out of groups, did not get much further than that though. So they were playing, they got out of the group stage. That's something to be noted. It means they were in that top 4 of the top 8 teams that were in that Invitational. So they don't get a ticket to the Commissioner's Cup. They don't get to go to Atlanta. Unfortunate. You do hate to see that, but it does show that they're playing more than just their standard matches, which means they've got more practice time, they've got more experience in officials, and hopefully they can use that to get themselves into the round 1 matchup because they're going to need that help. They want to keep moving forward. So best of luck there to the Muskies, but just like they're hoping to move forward in the playoff bracket, we'll move forward toward the other side of things here. That'll be the Valorant Open Division. And the Open Division, well, it is one looking to get blown wide open. All these teams are very much neck and neck. There are upset potentials all across the board here. We had casters try to jump on the desk. They said, this is obviously going to be a stomp. The records are too good. Nah, every game there is a chance. Every single matchup, there's potential. So there is a first seed in Sac State Gold, but that first seed, while they've been running it down just a little bit, they've got a 6-2 record. And Chad, hear this one out, right? Grand Valley State University, their B team, they're the 2nd seed. They have a 7-1 record, but wait, the story's not over. The Fanshawe Falcons, who are 3rd seed, they have a 7-1 record as well, and they beat Sac State Gold 2-1. So I don't know what happens there, but even just in these top 3 seeds, there's a lot of potential for the playoffs.
Yeah, just because of how things get wrapped around with all the teams playing each other the way they do, some seeds do get rather interesting with how it plays out. At the end of the day, those are seedings, though. You have to keep in mind. And going to playoffs, when you're in the brackets, things like that, it's who wins the match on that day. So we have to look out at all these teams that clearly all of them can beat each other. Yeah. All of them are really good, which makes it even more exciting getting down to the final stretch of the season. See if Fanshawe, GVSU, or Sac State Gold can take it home, or if all 3 of them get upset by another team out there open division, because those are shark-infested waters, man. Everybody wants to be at that top and move up on the brackets and on the divisions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what we're looking at, about the 22nd seed in the open division to the 42nd seed that's going to have first round matchups to play here. And that's going to be on the upcoming Tuesday. I'm not actually positive when this airs, but it'll be April 4th just for convenience sake. So that's not an issue regardless. And then round number 2 kicks off on April 9th on the Saturday. And there's going to be coverage both here on the Esports U Network when those games go live, but also on twitch.tv/ECAC_esports. So regardless, those will be 2 different matches. So there's action getting caught everywhere in both divisions. So definitely something to see, regardless if you're a fan of whoever you're a fan of. The round 1 match is going to be quite interesting. The top seeds, obviously, you don't have to worry about it. They've got the buys coming forward into round 2. And there's a sleeper pick in the mix here at Chadlantis. Now, listen, I've never been a biased host, never been a biased caster. I give respect where it's due. And if we want to give respect out, right, to any teams that are playing through, that have buys, in fact, Don't have to worry about the round one matchup. We got to give love over to Missouri Baptist University, the Spartans Valerian team, right? Their team captain, Coordinator 3K, he has been doing his damnedest this season. He's been studying up VODs, whether it be on the broadcast, whether it be back in the booth, whether it be in the VOD review tank. He's getting the job done, and I heard he's hungry. I heard the cat, his name, it might as well be a tiger, right? He's a big cat. He's roaring pretty dang loud, and everybody else to him just looked like a bunch of gazelles running around the field wide open, and he's looking to feast this playoffs.
Coming in with the power of 3,000 cats going after them. Very charismatic as well, so good to be in a team captain role, if I do say so myself. I got to watch it, some matches being broadcasted as well for that team, and that fella did sneak out of a smoke that one time and got a double kill to win and then close out the game. So it was good looks out there for sure from Missouri Baptist University. So definitely a team to watch out for if you enjoy the feline friends out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And plenty more action to be on the lookout for in this upcoming week. As in the A division, the Bryant and Mustang University should be facing off here. Two seeds that are very close against one another. Mustang, I told you, they've been playing quite a bit, both in the ECAC and in other conferences. So I will ask that one out to them. I think they're going to take the W, but again, same records for those teams. Seeding is about 4 ranks apart, so that can come down to anybody. Another matchup I'm looking forward to, and Chad, you alluded to this a little bit earlier, so I'll let you have this one. Go ahead, take it.
Yeah, Farmingdale versus Cybears again. That is the
third time around.
Becoming like one of those El Clasico rivalries of collegiate scenes of Valorant. Is they play each other so often, and we even talked to Zeno from Farmingdale, as you mentioned. Yep. She's like, yeah, we play against New York Tech all the time, so we know how they play all the time as well. We would like them to lose so we can play against somebody else in the CECC matches last week. They're like, we just don't want them to win, so we have to play them again. We play them all the time. And they did play them in the groups as well and 13-5 them. But they both made it out of groups and got the playoffs. So both of them got out of groups and made it playoffs. Like, it's going to be a good match to watch for sure. And it's that El Clasico rivalry being formed between them. So you want to see which team comes out next.
Yeah, and if we got to make predictions for that matchup, Chad, which we don't have to, but it's more fun. It's more fun if we do. Yeah, I'm going the same way. I think Farmingdale takes that 1-2-0, but who knows? You have to see. The games do get played for a reason, and hopefully we're not caster cursing from here on around the U. And then in the open division, this one, it's really hard to call. All across the board, it's really hard to call. I can't even call a winner of the bracket, to be honest, for the open division. I think that one comes down to anybody. There's just so much upset potential. I just don't feel comfortable giving it away to anybody, to be honest. I think, if anything, the Fonchi Falcons, I think, are in the statistically best place to take that bracket over. Just the fact that they have beat the first seed and they are up there in that third seed positioning. I think if anyone's going to grab it just based off of how the regular season's gone, it'd be them. But I really don't know. I can't give that to anybody.
Missouri Baptist.
Oh, I was gonna say that. Because I feel like Missouri Baptist they had a forfeit loss in the season. Like, I feel like they played Sac State Gold, the number 1 seed. That was a 2-1 scoreline, pretty close. Yeah. So I think that one, we'll have to wait and see. But I can confidently call the A division. I've been calling it the whole time. Hell, I called it last week before we got into the gap week. I'm confident. Wichita State's taken the whole dang thing. There's no question about it. It's going to happen. They didn't lose to a single top 3 team. They've beat absolutely everybody. They will continue to beat everybody. They beat Boise State 2-0. They just went ahead and beat Grand Valley 2-0. They don't lose. Top teams, they're not nervous. They 2-0 them. They do not care. They've got the brooms out. They're going to sweep through the bracket.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be the favorites for sure. It's hard to say that they aren't. I mean, you just gave them the most justification to be a favorite if I've ever heard of it. So
I'm sure
they're beating literally all the best teams are beating the rest of the season of the league. So they're the ones to beat. They're the ones that are top dogs right now, and we'll see if anybody can topple them down.
Yeah, well, definitely have to see. But for now, we got some Rocket League action to see, and we got some handsome guys to see taking us through that. It's Bass and Pyro J. Take it over, ladies and gentlemen. It's Rocket League.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Around the U, the Rocket League portion this time. Thank you so much, Kat and Chad, for that lovely introduction. My name is Bass in the Past, joined alongside by none other than Pyro J. And Pyro, we've got a lot to talk about. The season has concluded for Rocket League, meaning there's a lot of people up on top, but also a lot of people that might be upset up top. So let's look over to our A division to start on off here, where we went into this one with 4 teams up top, all 6-1. We walk away with only 3 teams with a single loss, though, Pyro. Some big upsets there in that final week.
Yeah, huge upsets. We wanted to see really how it shook out, and if we get a top 3, top 2. We have 3 teams that are tied for that top position: Boise, Ball State, and King. There was a matchup between Boise and Kentucky there in that final week, and, well, let's just say Boise got the better of Kentucky 3-0. A sweep speaks numbers for Boise State, because that says, okay, we just took down a top team in commanding fashion. That arguably for me could be the number 1 rank seeded as you see them there on the leaderboard, Bass.
100%. They've shown themselves to be a strong team, not only throughout the season taking a single loss, but now they go into playoffs with a lot of extra momentum. But when we look over to our open division, it's a little bit different. Yes, we do have some teams up top there, but not necessarily as normal of the teams up top as you might expect. Our open division right now, we've got a lot of teams doing well, but only 2 of them are 6-1. But when I say a lot of teams doing well, we have 8 teams currently tied at 6-2 overall, meaning that it's going to be a lot of chaos going into playoffs, but it also might be chaos that lends itself to upset. Pyro, we saw a rather surprising result there in that open division.
You know what? And you mentioned chaos as well. That's the beauty of it, okay? You get a top team. It's like March Madness, okay? We may be in April, but we want the madness. We want the chaos, okay? One of the top teams, 7-1, just lost to Farmingdale. That was U of L, Louisville, getting taken down by Farmingdale, who's now 6-2. So that's kind of a rising story that you want to keep your eyes out for, is when a team like that can take down another top team later on in the season. That shows that it's a team that's improving, right? Throughout the season, you want to pay close attention to how these maybe possibly new teams had some stumbling blocks earlier on in the season, but are now in their final form. And so I think Farmingdale is really a team to look out for in terms of they've got it. They're ready to take down the big kahuna. And now we got playoffs, Bass, and I couldn't be happier.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be an incredible playoffs. And, well, the great thing is that we get to show you guys a little bit of what might to come here, because we've got some highlights from the last couple of weeks here to show you guys and really show you, well, exactly what we've been talking about. The first 2 teams, Farmingdale and Louisville here. Again, this is not necessarily the most surprising result, considering they're both solid, but when you're going through and having plays like this, it makes it a little bit more definitive. Starting off with a bump like that is how you open a series.
That's what you got to do sometimes. You got to take the top teams out of their own rhythm. Rocket League teams who know how to pay attention to anything other than the ball are usually those teams that, well, either are your worst teams or your best. And a bump play like that can do it. We have another Farmingdale team taking on Keene here, and Farmingdale getting the goals.
And Farmingdale doing a good job, showing themselves very solidly this week. A lot of teams really trying to perform on this final showing, as plays like this just don't come every single day. A fake out on the flip reset to drop it low for Donkers to shoot it in just goes to show you teams, like you said, they are truly in their final form. They have found the mechanics, found ways to deploy themselves in the best ways possible going into the end of the season. So, Pyro, I'm excited. If this is the caliber of play we're coming to expect going into playoffs, it's going to be something else.
And you know what? That in particular, that play with the flip reset, but another player diving in for the shot instead. That reminds me of some of the highlight plays that we just watched in the RLCS Winter Major, right? You saw teams like, it was either Version 1 or G2, both creative teams and very locked in as a unit, pulling off those plays that take defenders off guard, right? And so maybe they're taking some notes from these top teams from that huge major situation and bringing in those top plays into this division here. So that's what I like to see, is the top plays right here. That's the kind of action that we like to pay attention to.
100%, especially when it's mind games like this, being able to fake out defenders, put a shot on, and make sure that it stays. Again, Louisville, they tried their best. They played a very good series, but at the end of this one, Farmingdale was the one that came out on top. But good thing is for both of these teams that they will still have a chance. We've been talking about playoffs this entire time. There's a long playoffs coming ahead of us, so let's look to the open division to talk about that first here because, teams to watch. Obviously, we're going to mention Louisville, but I really do think it's their opponents right now that we do have to focus on here. The fact that Farmingdale gets a big win to finish off their season makes me think they might have a little bit of extra momentum going into playoffs.
There could be. Yeah, Farmingdale. I mean, I was talking about the fact that they look better as a unit, but you're right. You got to pay attention to all the teams in that open division. There's BSU right now, the only other team right now that is 7-1 that's looking to make a big break. You got JWU as well at the 3 seed. Eagles in 5, RMC in 4. You got all these teams that actually have this bye week now and are moving on to not only round 2, but maybe even round 3 with a clean slate because of just their performance during this division. So hopefully that break for them, Bass, doesn't leave them cold and iced out when they have to face up against some of the bubbling competition. But either way, it's breaking down for a beautiful, chaotic open division.
I think that's the name of the game right here. Considering how many teams, 40 total, end up going into playoffs, it's a lot of teams that are going to be battling in that open division. And like you were talking about, some interesting teams to watch are going to be JWU, a squad that has done well in other divisions previously, but they fall just short of making that top 2 here. They still get to bye their first week, so they're going to be able to avoid that, but they also get stuck in a little bit of a rough spot here. They have a lot of middle ground teams around them. Their weak second matchup that they're able to play will most likely be against it's going to be against a top 20 team, either the 14th seed in SSF or the 19th in GVSU, and the reward for playing that team, and if they win through that, is either the 6th or 11th seed most likely. So they've got a very tough bracket there at the bottom. A lot of good teams that are going to be having to face each other only a couple weeks in because it's single elimination. Pyro, it's one and done. If you don't perform, that's the end of your season.
That's how important league play has been, to get yourself in the best position possible to stay alive as long as possible. But Bass, I want to talk about Division A as well, kind of the top teams of this bracket. Okay, we talked about there's 3 top teams, and if you want to ask me, which I'm pretending you asked me, the team that I'm looking out for here in the postseason, King University. Yep. Okay, only 1 loss to their name. I personally casted their open division team, and they looked like they were Division A. Okay, so if you're telling me that they are the open division and you still have players that are playing lights out in Division A, I'd like to see who beat them, because I don't know who can, especially in the postseason. That, for me, is the team I'm looking out for in the postseason. Bass, you got any teams in the big division keeping your eyes on?
Honestly, I would agree with you. I think King is a big one to focus on, but the only other team is going to be the one that just completely smoked their competition going into the last week here. I have to point out Boise. I think similar to King, this is a chance for Boise not redeem themselves, but to prove themselves. They have been organizations, they have been teams that have been around the Rocket League collegiate scene for a very extended period of time. They're extremely solid. They've done well, but the big issue for them is getting that check mark, that little bit of we've been able to climb the mountain and summit it as well. Being able to get to the very top and prove themselves against really sturdy competition, taking that number 1 place home. It's going to be hard, though, because the big issue is that both those teams are on other sides of the bracket right now. Boise State got a little bit lucky. The only other team that they're going to have to face is going to be University of Kentucky in the playoffs from that top 4, from those top 4 seeds, and that's a team they just took down. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ball State and King University are going to match up against each other really not that late into the bracket, probably the semifinals. So it's one of these things where I see Boise getting to the finals, and I see them facing either Ball or King, but I might agree with you. I might give the edge to King right now.
Oh, we both have the same prediction, I think, then in the finals. All right, you heard it here, folks, as Bass and I are looking at a Boise State versus King University finals. But hey, to all you other teams, prove us wrong. Prove us wrong. We're ready to see the 16 seed versus the 42. Okay, whatever it is, bring it on. Okay, the madness, the chaos. We talking about the open division, but hey, throw it in Division A as well. We're ready for it, Bass. We're ready for the postseason. That is what is next.
Absolutely. And well, looking towards that postseason, we've still got the first matchups for that postseason. So we got to look. Any big games catching your eye here, Pyro? I know for myself personally, I want to see a redemption out of Kentucky. They walk out of this really deflated. Unfortunately, going 0-3 does not give yourself a lot of confidence going into the playoffs. So they face Keene Rocket League here, the 29th seed, which would not necessarily be, the best of options if you're going to go against a different team, but I do see Keene having a little bit of vulnerability here. They can find a way to maybe get through Kentucky here and completely throw this bracket on its head. Kentucky, I'm looking to you to prove me wrong here, though. It's not as if I think you're going to lose this one, but for some reason, somewhere fluttering in the back of my mind, it makes me think this could be an upset.
Fair enough. All right, we'll keep our eyes on Kentucky and Keene, but Bass, just because I heard you talking all good about Boise State and they swept another top team, SJU Hawks. Come on, boys. I know you got it in you. 32 seed up against the number 1 seed. Make history right here. Boise State, they're not infallible. Take them down and go all the way. Cinderella story. SJU Hawks. You heard it right here first, baby.
I mean, hey, listen, they did take a loss during the season. No one went undefeated. They went 7-1, so it's been proven. They do bleed, but the question is are they going to have enough to take them down? We're going to have to find out next week after all of this is concluded. But for right now, we're actually going to send you guys on to our Overwatch division here. We're going to throw over to Dividing and possibly a guest appearance from Dryad. So, for myself, Bass, and Pyro, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Around the U for the Rocket League division and leave you in the very capable hands of our Overwatch team. See you next time.
Thank you so much, Bass and Pyro. It is unfortunately just me today, just little old Dividing. Hopefully, we'll be able to get Dryad back on a future episode, but I hope that doesn't dampen any of your excitement because my name is Dividing, but the anticipation is multiplying as we are now looking ahead to postseason ECAC play. We're going to be going over the top teams, the teams to watch going into the playoff bracket. But first, let's recap what we saw during the last week of ECAC Overwatch play, as well as last week's CECC Northeast Invitational. Starting off, of course, with the game that was streamed on the ECAC Esports channel. That was Wichita State versus Suny Polytechnic. This was a very interesting game. These were two teams that were going into it at 4-3, but had a lot to prove, right? Wichita State, I talked about them last week on the show, right? They took a pretty tough loss to Johnson & Wales, but turns out they had been losing a couple of players for those games. So they were really looking to get back on track against Suny Poly, and my goodness, did they do it. This was the most explosive play of the game by far. I mean, oh my gosh. That is a 5K pulse bomb, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it's been a while. You're probably feeling pretty surprised. Like, how the heck does that even happen in these days with all the transcendences and the immortality fields and the pulse bombs? It feels super difficult to get those big explosive plays with the Tracer these days, but Wichita State played it perfectly. A player found a way around to the end of the Suny Poly advance as they pushed in. These pulse bomb by itself, the damage that it does, right? It's not going to be enough to take down the Arisa, take down the Sigma. They got the rest of the team pushed in to Suny Poly and chunked those tanks down just enough for a player to come in and wipe them all out with the pulse bomb, only leaving a Transcendence Zenyatta in its wake. It was an incredible play, and that's the kind of stuff that Wichita State did that entire game. That super aggressive balls to the wall energy that they really tried to play against Johnson & Wales. It didn't work out for them very well in that case, but this time around, it seemed with their main tank in and everyone else swapped around a little bit, they looked a lot more comfortable. So as long as they can have that starting lineup in, I think Wichita State are a team that you should definitely watch going into the playoffs. Suny Poly at 4-4, they do barely squeak in. Hopefully they have sort of worked off the rust after this being their first game they were able to play after 2 straight forfeits.
That being said, they are one of the lowest seeds in the bracket, so they do have quite a ways to go before they can be considered for the top seeds. But they got in, and that's all that matters. So let's take a second to talk about the Open Division, where we saw a game between Code College and St. Andrews go all the way to map 5. This was an insanely close game and a very interesting clash of styles between Code College, who played a lot of these double shield close range compositions revolving around the Orisa and the Reaper, and St. Andrews that were playing a lot more longer range spammy compositions that focused a lot on the Pharah, the Junkrat, these super big AoE characters that are based on keeping sort of disrupting and putting just tons of damage into those brawl comps that like to stay super close together. It was a good try from St. Andrews after going down 2-0 in the series. They made it all the way back to a map 5, threatening a reverse sweep, but Code College, they brought it back on Lijiang Tower, including this incredible clip coming from their Reinhardt and their Reaper. That was the last clip from Wichita. I wouldn't mind watching that one again. But we'll get that queued up real quick. Yep, here we go. Bomberman getting a huge, getting a really nice Death Blossom here, with, of course, the Reinhardt putting in the assist on the Earth Shatter. Was super good, and that's why Code College was able to play this comp so efficiently. It's because they knew how to combo their ultimates together super well to sort of mitigate what St. Andrews was doing. And on Lijiang in particular, they did a very good job of playing inside those enclosed areas. So when St. Andrews tried to play the Pharah, it was forced to sort of swoop down into a more vulnerable situation where you saw at the end of that clip, the Reaper actually ended up taking out the Pharah in itself. So usually you don't see Reapers take out Pharah. It's just not a very long-range character. But Code College, they made it work, and they really needed that game too. They were going into that 3-4. They get that 4th win on the board to just barely squeak in to the Open Division playoffs. Congratulations to Code College, and good luck in the coming weeks. But now let's talk about the big event of last season. Last week, the CECC Northeast Invitational. This was a really, really big event because, of course, a berth in the big CECC Atlanta LAN in May was on the line for the winner. There were some cash prizes involved as well. It was going to be huge. There was going to be a lot on the line. And, of course, Bay State just comes in and rolls through literally everyone because that's what Bay State does. They are such a good team, and I'm going to be talking about them almost nonstop for the rest of this segment because they absolutely deserve it as a number 1 seed in the playoffs. But as far as the CECC tournament went, it was a lot of domination coming out from Bay State. It was the overarching story of the weekend. Just everyone going up against Bay State. Champlain tried, Johnson & Wales tried, and ultimately failing and getting spawn camped. Just like everyone else did. So I want to bring up a quick play coming out from the grand finals, actually, of the CECC Invitational. This is coming at the very end of the weekend. And let me kind of set the stage for you real quick. First of all, a hugely good play here from the Johnson & Wales player, Robe. Actually got a first pick before this as well. This was a 3K from Robe, a pop-off from a Johnson & Wales player that we hadn't seen so far in this game. Johnson & Wales absolutely had the potential to move forward and continue to move forward and get that first point. Something that almost no one had done against Bay State so far today. But the tanks of Bay State, even though they were down players, they pushed in anyways, knowing. I think in their minds, they're saying, well, let's just try and stagger for as long as possible. Who knows? Maybe we can pull off some crazy individual play like they have been doing before. And Johnson & Wales just back off. They C9'd the point. It's the funny letter number. And this isn't a hate to Johnson & Wales at all. They're a very solid school and a solid program that has shown to be able to play at a very high level. I mean, case in point, what Robe did at the start of the clip, right? But keep in mind, this was the second game that Johnson & Wales had played against Bay State this weekend. And it was coming off of Bay State literally spawn camping Johnson & Wales for a solid minute and a half going into that game. It was brutal. And after getting spawn camped like that, you get kind of conditioned, even if you don't want to admit it, to say, oh my gosh, these guys are so good. We have to just back up when we see them coming. We can't do anything about it. It's like almost a Pavlovian response, right? You see them coming at you, go, oh no, okay, you could have the space, it's fine. But you just couldn't give up that space in that case if you were Johnson & Wales. The overtime wick burned down so fast, so before they even realized what was happening, the game was over. That's what Bay State does to you. They condition you to fear them, to respect them, and then they use it against you for the entire rest of the game. They take the space that you give them and just continue taking more. They are so greedy, and it's so fun to watch this team. Of course, coming out on top in the CECC Northeast Invitational, we will be seeing them in Atlanta this May, going up against the best collegiate Overwatch teams in the country, and they are a solid bet to make it really far in that tournament. And of course, they are going to be looking to do the same in the ECAC playoffs starting this week, where Bay State are the #1 seed once again, coming off of a season where they won last fall without dropping a single game. We're now moving into another season where they have not dropped a single game. Bay State have not lost since they joined last fall. This is something that I brought up last week. It's something that we're going to keep bringing up until Bay State eventually loses. This is the biggest story of ECAC at the end of the day. And Bay State, they deserve it, right? This is a program that came into the scene last year, kind of went under the radar, right? They came in at about the same time that Illinois State came in and picked up what was the best contenders team in North America at the time, pretty much, and just started destroying everyone. At about that time, that's when Bay State came in, and they picked up players like Faded, like Forgotten, and Abs, and other players like Cabe, who hadn't really had their time in the sun, so to speak, right? Where they had been good players in the top of the tier 3 scene, or maybe they had actually gotten into contenders, but never had a super high placement in tier 2. Players that we all knew were good, but hadn't really had their big breakout moment. They brought these players together under one roof, and they have been grinding for a full year. They've entered basically every collegiate tournament that you can, grinding and improving and getting better as a team of 6. And that is where we get right now, with Bay State being one of the best, arguably top 3, top 2 collegiate programs in the country right now. Their hard work has absolutely paid off, and they're going to be a team to watch, not only in ECAC, but in the CECC, in the Collegiate Overwatch Championship, where they made it to the playoffs there. This is a team that you're going to have to get used to at the top of the Collegiate Overwatch standings, because they are not going to go anywhere for a long time. But let's talk a little bit about the other teams that had actually made it to that Overwatch Collegiate Championship, because we can't be discounting that there are 2 other ECAC teams that made it to that top 16. There were hundreds of colleges that competed in the Overwatch Collegiate Championship, so making it to that 16-team playoff is a huge achievement. Those 2 teams, of course, are SCAD and Boise. SCAD are a new team coming into ECAC this semester. They are a massive program coming in. They've really turned heads, especially with their former contenders to Portline and Cabimas and Snap. Those 2 guys have been around in the tier 2 scene for a very long time. I want to say since 2018, 2019. They have been grinding away in contenders. Of course, have not made it to the highest level, but came together in collegiate on SCAD to put together what is one of the strongest support lines in all of collegiate Overwatch. I genuinely do believe that. You also have a former collegiate tier 2 main tank in Shiz that has played on teams like Karasuno, has a very, very strong Reinhardt, can stand up with the best of them. SCAD is a team that is still sort of new. People are kind of getting used to seeing them around the top, but you will continue to see them. And I think they will continue to get better and rise through the ranks as this team continues to play together. And hopefully their DPS can kind of reach the ranks of and the notoriety of their tanks and supports. Because like I looked at their tanks and supports and I knew who they were immediately. I couldn't say the same quite for their DPS players. But I mean, obviously they can aim good because SCAD picked them up and did a fantastic job with them, getting them to a 7-1 record and the number 2 seed. They will be the team that most people look at as the team with the best chance of taking down Bay State and ECAC, but you can't discount Boise State here, the number 3 seed right now, and what is currently the best teams in collegiate Overwatch right now. We're one of the teams that were... they were the team that was the runner-up last season, right? They were the second best team in collegiate Overwatch last season. In ECAC last season. They did a fantastic job. We're going to be the team to take it to Bay State, and then just sort of fell off in the playoffs, took a bit of an early exit. A little bit unfortunate for them, but they came back with a new collegiate tier 2 main tank and Matt Merck, and they're hoping that firepower at the main tank position will finally be enough to launch them into the first tier of collegiate programs. As of right now, still 6-2, lost to Bay State and SCAD. So those two are the colleges that seem to be the brick wall for them. And hopefully they're hoping in the playoffs they'll be able to leap past them. So those are your main 3 competitors. I do want to point out here in this little clump of 5 and 3 teams, I want to point out Bethel. I want to point out Johnson and Wales. I don't think they're going to win against those top 3 teams just based off of what has happened before, but these are 2 teams that have taken maps off of teams like Boise. They're teams that have shown the ability to hang with the big dogs if they really need to. At the end of the day, it's got to be a really good day for them and a really bad day for whoever of the big 3 that they're going up against, but it is actually, I think, both these squads are squads that have the ability to make it a lot deeper in these playoffs than people think. I'm going to keep singing their praises until more people take them seriously, because I actually have a lot of faith in these 2 programs. But when it comes to my predictions, I mean, look, I really, really want to say someone else. I really do. I promise I do. But Bay State hasn't lost in ECAC. That's what it comes down to. I cannot, as an analyst, choose against the Bay State until I see that someone in ECAC has actually beaten Bay State. That's it. That's what it comes down to. I think until someone in ECAC, whether that's SCAD, whether that's Boise, whether that's Bethel or Johnson and Wales or someone else entirely, is able to beat them in the playoffs, I have to have them going all the way. That being said, if you're watching this and you are going to be going up against Bay State in the playoffs, just know, while my brain might not be predicting you, my heart is with you all the way. And at the end of the day, isn't the heart what matters most? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the Around the U recap of the ECAC, CECC, everything that's been going on in the Esports U collegiate ecosystem. My name's been Dividing. I hope you had as much fun listening as I had as much fun talking for the last 15 minutes. And without further ado, I think we're going to be heading over to Poly to close out the show. Thanks, everyone.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dividing, and all the other spectacular analysts on this week's episode of Around the U for that amazing coverage of the ECAC conference. Just a reminder, next week, April 4th, we'll start the playoffs for the ECAC Esports Conference. That'll be right here on Esports U. And like always, if you're looking for up-to-date action with anything Esports U or college esports related, like the ECAC Conference, please make sure to follow at Esports U on Twitter and Instagram, as well as at CECC Events for all of the latest information regarding our grand final LAN in Atlanta, May 7th and 8th at the Gateway Center Arena. My name is Paulie Hype. That's going to do it for another episode of Around the U, and we'll see you right back here next week for the start of some playoff coverage. We'll see you next time.